with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Biden and McCarthy still negotiating the debt ceiling, but a recent court case may very well change the dynamics. Jack Smith subpoenas Trump's foreign business records as a part of his stolen documents investigation. Meanwhile, E. Jean Carroll seeks new damages from Trump following Trump's slanderous CNN appearance. Driver crashes a truck into White House barriers. Reportedly may have had a Nazi flag on him, as people often do when renting a U-Haul.
He was just reminding himself of how much he hates the Nazis by having it with him.
It's historical. Just to remind myself of history as I drive through Washington, D.C.
It's what could have happened if we lost the World War II, just saying. Greedflation theory gaining traction. Massive corporate profits force a reckoning on the cause of inflation. And as of today, Nebraska has more or less a 10-week abortion ban and restricts trans health care. New report, FBI investigated the Clinton Foundation throughout Trump's entire term. Far longer than agents and prosecutors say was warranted. Keep looking in the Durham report for that. Ron DeSantis' COVID police importation project drew the worst of the worst. 1.5 million people apply for a migrant program that has a 30,000 person a month cap. Tim Scott declares as a vice presidential candidate. And Minnesota's success story as a blueprint for the rest of the country. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is, what, Emma Vigland?
Newsday Tuesday.
There you go.
Hello.
Newsday Tuesday. Are we wearing matching shirts?
No, you are wearing green and I'm wearing blue.
Yeah, not quite matching.
Sort of looks like it in my monitor, so.
But in real life, I'm like sitting 6 feet away from you.
Well, I could look over there, but man, I'm not going to. I prefer.
Use the reference monitor.
Looking at the way that other people do.
It's mediated.
Yeah, exactly. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Tuesday and Newsday Tuesday. We're going to be having, we're going to be talking to Nathan Tankis about the debt ceiling tomorrow. But, we'll probably be talking about the debt ceiling on Friday with David Dayen. But we'll get to this, that story in just a moment. Just want to give you an update on how the Hunter Biden investigation is going in the House. James Comer, who is the chair of the House Oversight Committee, goes on and is giving an update on the Hunter Biden thing. And apparently it is working insofar as
He's finally seen the dick pics?
No, he hasn't seen the dick pics. He's seen something just as enticing to him. That is Donald Trump's favorability ratings going up and Joe Biden's going down. Here he is saying the quiet part loud on Fox and Friends first. What is this? This is the Fox and Friends early show?
So this is like a 4 a.m. news hit. By the way.
Okay. All right, there we go.
If you need to
Yeah,
pregame,
I've been getting up earlier. It's tough.
Wow. All right, here we go.
Talk about this, and we have talked to you about this on this show, about how the media can just not ignore this any longer. In an op-ed in the Washington Post, it says millions flow to Biden family members. Don't pretend it doesn't matter. So do you think that because of your investigation, that is what's moved this needle with the media?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no question. You look at the polling, and right now, Donald Trump is 7 points ahead of Joe Biden and trending upward. Joe Biden's trending downward. And I believe that the media is looking around, scratching their head, and they're realizing that the American people are keeping up with our investigation, and they realize something's wrong here.
Now, we should say this. It broke through the Washington Post on their opinion column written by Jim Garrity, who is a writer for the National Review.
Right-wing hack.
but it's in the Washington Post, which will disparage in every other context except when they platform our ideas.
I mean, they're right. The media can no longer ignore it. That doesn't say whether they should or not.
Yeah.
Well, but the point is that a lot of times when you're doing an investigation in Congress, what you're looking for is to find evidence of some type of crime or to elucidate the issue for people. It's generally not stated as the purpose of these investigations to change favorability ratings. Now, I guess we should be thankful that Comey's not Comer rather is not pretending that they're doing anything other than that. But
yeah, I mean, there's elements of this on the left or in the Democrats and the right. I mean,
I think the Democrats should do it more often.
Yeah, it's called doing politics.
It's called doing politics. It's just pretty. You really have run out of things in terms of its efficacy, right? Which is what he's arguing. You really have to be desperate to basically say, like, he's basically saying to his bosses and to the Heritage Foundation, like, hey guys, no, actually it's working. Look, we got the guy from the National Review to write an op-ed about it. And he's pretending like the polling is a function of this. I can guarantee you the polling is not a function of this.
No.
Of America's love of reports like the Durham report.
Yeah. The Durham report's blowing the socks off of people. And I can tell you that it is, I have to say, it is, I'm surprised at how much of a failure these these hearings into Hunter Biden have been.
Well, they've got nothing really. I mean, except they just want to drag it out for there to be an appearance of impropriety or something shady going on. But like correlation is not causation, Comer. Pretty sure Biden's approval ratings are low for a variety of reasons, but
they've basically been low his whole presidency.
Exactly,
and
didn't change much in the midterms. It's a weird situation we're in.
But there was not much to Benghazi either.
Exactly,
but
that was more effective.
And it is shocking to me how ineffective this has been.
That was a woman, she was the Secretary of State working for a black guy. Yeah. Like, honestly, I think there's some of that. Biden's just so anodyne to that kind of, to Republicans in that way by being old, boring white man.
I think that's actually a very good point. It could very well be like this is just much harder to launder misogyny and anti-Semitism through, racism. Through that.
It's also just not as good of a vehicle. Like Biden's son versus like the Clinton Foundation. Like it's not quite the same apparatus.
Yeah, and because let's be real, like the Clintons were a more corrupt family. Like, I mean, I feel that's pretty clear to say. They had more skeletons in their closet. Biden's just kind of standard nepotism for his kid. And they built up a multi-year demonization kind of narrative about the Clintons.
Yes. And I don't know how much more corrupt. I mean, corrupt in the sense that maybe the way that the way that government broadly has been corrupted by sort of neoliberal policies. But I don't know if like there was any more like criminal activity than anywhere else. There's a new report out today, actually, about the investigation into the
Clinton Foundation.
The Clinton Foundation, and it basically says the FBI investigated the Clinton Foundation throughout the entire 4 years of the Trump administration, despite the fact that most of the agents and the prosecutors are like, there's nothing here.
Well, the Clinton Foundation is corrupt, though, but not in the ways that the Trump administration cares about. Like, where did some of the money go that was donated to it? What are they actually doing in Haiti for multiple decades? What's their involvement as an NGO with, like, potential anti-democracy? That stuff's accepted by those guys.
Right. Corrupt, but legal, as opposed to corrupt and criminal.
Yeah, FBI hasn't raised an eye yet. Oh, we told Haiti not to do minimum wage.
Right, exactly. Yeah. That is par for the course. That's, I guess, was my point there in terms of like legality. Sadly, a lot of that stuff is legal. It's just imperialism.
I prefer they just did corruption and left working people alone.
Exactly. Can't you just like make a couple $100,000 at this thing, but instead they have to bring the whole force of the government down for the sake of, like, I don't know, the sugar companies.
Levi's.
Yeah, or Levi's, whoever it is. Couple words from our sponsors today. This is a great one, and literally, I've been to. I mean, I don't. This is probably not the way that they want to associate this with, but I can tell you that, like, I've had to go to a lot of funerals over the past couple of months, because I'm at the age where, you know, my parents' friends and people of that generation have passed away, and at all of these events, we're talking about stories that you know, our parents were involved in. I'm talking to the kids of these things, and you gain a much deeper appreciation for having stories like this on record, and it really is. It's also just interesting to talk to people and find out, you know, new stories that you hadn't heard. And there is a way in which you can do this while you still have the time to do it. This is a great product, Storyworth. We've been I think we've been sponsored by them for years over the years. And Storyworth is an online service. It helps you, and we got Father's Day coming up. Great gift for Father's Day, but frankly, you could also do it in retrospect for Mother's Day. It helps you and your dad or your father figure connect through sharing stories and memories. It preserves them for years to come, for you to give to your kids or for you to have. I mean, so this is how it works. Every week, Storyworth sends an email to your dad or your mom or whoever you bought it for, grandparents, uncles, doesn't matter. And it provides for them a thought-provoking question of your choice, or you can just have the default ones, of a vast pool of possible options. And each unique prompt asks questions you probably wouldn't think about, like, you know, what's your favorite childhood memories, or have you ever feared for your life, or what was your favorite car, what was the story about that, et cetera, et cetera. And then what they do is they write a brief or a long story, and after the year is done, you can put it together in a book, and they can also, put photos in. And it just ends up being something that, you know, you will, both of you, who you give it to and the giver, will cherish for years and years to come. So with Father's Day coming up, give all the fathers in your life a meaningful gift. Like I say, you can cherish and for years to come. It's Storyworth. You can save $10 on your first purchase when you go to storyworth.com/majority. That's STORYWORTH.com/majority. Storyworth. Save $10 on your first purchase. Storyworth.com/majority. Do it now. Great Father's Day gift Get it out of the way. Don't be smart about it. Also, today's sponsor, Shopify. We use Shopify here at the Majority Report. It is what basically constitutes our merch store. But Shopify is a platform that is revolutionizing millions of businesses all around the world. It doesn't matter what you're selling. You'll be selling, merch like we are, or I don't know, seeds or candy, or it doesn't matter. And the amazing thing about Shopify is that it not only covers online sales when we do live shows, which happens rarely, but it would cover our, point of sale sales and integrates this. So you get an all-in-one e-commerce platform. It also lets you sell across all the social media marketplaces like TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram. It is packed with industry-leading tools ready to ignite your growth. Shopify gives you a complete control of your business and your brand without having to learn any new skills in design or code. And thanks to 24/7 help and an extensive business course library, Shopify is there to support your success at every step of the way. It is now your turn to get serious about selling and try Shopify today. This is Possibility, powered by Shopify. You can sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/majority, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/majority. Take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/majority. And our final sponsor for the day is a listener of the program, IAC Laser Engraving. It is a leftist-owned worker collective started by a longtime listener, Ryan Lubin, in September of 2021. His company is democratically structured to ensure that any hierarchies are justified and efficient. They use sustainably sourced materials coupled with extremely energy-efficient laser technology to bring you unique products that you will not find anywhere else. So your purchase of any items not only gets you a one-of-a-kind product, it also goes directly to supporting a business model that is structured around compassionate and worker-centered care, as opposed to the more rapacious capitalistic structures. And here's a couple examples. This is, I've shown you before, like Saul now has a spaceman hanging in his house. His house.
His house, his room.
His room. He's waiting on the owl and the Bigfoot up there. If we got to negotiate that in the place, but this is a sloth puzzle. I don't know how many pieces are in this puzzle, but their puzzles range from like 99 to 500 pieces. It comes in this really nice looking box here, like this. Oh wait, that's the koala. Yeah, that's a koala. This is the box that it comes in. Beautiful, like box. All of this is sourced from sustainable eucalyptus. The image for this puzzle was provided by Gavin Girondo. He's a popular Asheville, North Carolina artist. Here is the sloth, and it's pretty cool. This hangs up on the wall, and they have all sorts of type of gifts like this. You can go and you can get a custom-made puzzle. They use a high-definition UV printer to render the image onto the wood, and then it's cut into the desired amount of things. So if you want to turn any image, your dog, your cat, your folks, your dad, Father's Day coming up, your family, into a high-definition wooden puzzle, they can do that for you too. Look into their custom puzzles at iaclasers.com. Allow 4 to 6 days for custom puzzle processing. Use the coupon code MAJORITY10 and you will get 10% off your purchase today. Enter coupon code MAJORITY10 at purchase. Receive 10% discount on their amazing products. iaclasers.com. Great Father's Day gift or gift for any occasion. All of those links we'll be putting in the YouTube and podcast description. Let's go. Here is Kevin McCarthy yesterday speaking to reporters outside the White House about the debt ceiling negotiations.
Mr. Speaker, is there any what areas, if any, did you guys find agreement on today?
Look, I think we both agree we want to be able to come to an agreement. We both agree on the areas that we know there's disagreement on, but I think it was productive in the professionalism, the honesty with one another, and the desire to try to find common ground.
I mean, the depressing part about this is
everything. I hate this news cycle. Every time it comes around, like this kind of garbage, it's just
Chuck Schumer blew this when the Senate didn't take it up.
Mm-hmm. Tim Kaine said it yesterday.
In the lame duck.
Tim Kaine was like, well, we probably should have done this at the end of 2022, which was what
even Bill Kristol.
Everyone was saying.
This is Chuck Schumer's job. This is his job to marshal this through the Senate. If it didn't happen there, it is his fault. Then it is Biden's fault for claiming that they're not going to negotiate and then negotiating. The other day, we played a clip with Biden in Japan, I think it was, right, for the G7.
Mm-hmm.
As he was leaving, somebody had asked him about the 14th Amendment. He's like, well, we don't have time to do that, et cetera, et cetera. Well, David Dayen had an interesting piece. I don't know if he put it out yesterday or today or 3 a.m. in the morning when he does this stuff. They have been following the debt ceiling fight. They have a feature they call X Date. He's talking about this past weekend. White House leaked over the weekend that they had offered significant spending freezes on both defense and non-defense discretionary spending, amounting to a $1.1 trillion cut over 10 years, which Republicans rejected because they want higher defense spending. Now, I know that comes as a shock to everybody because we were told for months.
They want to cut out the wokeness.
They want to cut out the wokeness and how we're only hearing about defense cuts. The only anti-war party is the Republican Party. A Saturday statement from the White House press secretary emphasized closing tax loopholes and further drug price reform, which the president reinforced on a couple occasions. Meanwhile, Republican demands have gotten more extreme, including stiffer work requirements for SNAP and border security measures that aren't even in Limit, Save, Grow. That was the budget bill that they had passed. He goes on to talk about the negotiations, but then cites that Joe Biden had said, look, we don't have time for the 14th Amendment to invoke it. Now, you don't invoke the Constitution. You just follow the Constitution. Mm-hmm. You don't invoke the Constitution until your acts, which you believe are constitutional, are questioned. And that's how it would play out. If they went and they just paid the debt, they just raised this debt ceiling and did nothing, presumably somebody would sue them. Not quite clear who it would be. Maybe Congress, maybe I don't know what their standing necessarily would be. It's unclear what the harm is. Would sue them, and then they would resolve this, but presumably it would happen, in a month or weeks and weeks. We don't have time to do that. But it turns out that there is already litigation in front of a federal court involving the debt ceiling that the Biden administration is a part of. It's just that they could take a specific stance on it. The National Association of Government Employees. And when we first talked about the debt ceiling, I got a IM saying, don't forget, and I had forgotten this. I had forgotten from the last time. When there's a government shutdown, when they run out of money, it hurts government workers. Not just in terms of the agency's inability to sort of plan and know how much money they're going to have, but the National Association of Government Employees, their the problem that they have is that one of the ways, the extraordinary measures in which Janet Yellen will go to extend the debt ceiling is by freezing payments into the pension plans of the National Association of Government Employees. Now, if you don't put that money in today, and instead you put it in a month, you lose the growth that's associated with that over the course of that. So there is a harm to that, to their pension fund. And they have filed an emergency injunction in their case, alleging that the debt ceiling, the idea of it is unconstitutional.
Yeah.
Because the fourth, I think it's the fourth clause of the 14th Amendment says, we pay our debts, period. It doesn't matter what our debt ceiling is. Whatever our debts are, we pay them. And the argument is that the debt ceiling statute, because it's a statute, effectively forces the president to use, God bless you, a line item veto, which has already been ruled unconstitutional. It gives the president excess power because Janet Yellen's extraordinary measures to stay under the borrowing limit included suspending investments into the NAG employee retirement plans. There is active and ongoing harm, which will get worse if the ceiling is hit. So this litigation's not theoretical, as he writes. There is a case. The plaintiffs are seeking quick action relief. Anyone spinning out a scenario about what might happen in the debt ceiling statute constitutionally is challenged is just being ignorant. It's being challenged in federal district court in Massachusetts right now. The defendants in the case are Janet Yellen and Joe Biden. They were served with a summons on May 16th and now have to June 6th to respond. That is after Janet Yellen's projected date of June 1st being the drop dead date, but they could certainly file earlier, Dan writes, and it would be absurd for them not to. Biden's entire objection to, quote, invoking the 14th Amendment is that it would take too long. Well, here's an opportunity with an active lawsuit to get the kind of clarity they're seeking before the X date is reached. Biden could file a response offering no defense on the constitutionality of the debt ceiling or even agreeing that it's unconstitutional. And then the judge would have to rule on the injunction. And if there's no argument between the parties, he could rule that, okay, there doesn't seem to be a case here. It's unconstitutional. Or he could seek an intervener, someone with standing to argue in the stead of the president and the Treasury Secretary. But since they're the only ones who can actually harm the plaintiffs, and
we can still hear Sam, but his camera is
I don't know why it's doing that. And he's the only one who can actually harm the plaintiffs by failing to execute appropriations and furloughing or firing employees. It's not clear who the intervener could be. So that's option A. Option B is for Biden to keep finding a way for McCarthy to harm beneficiaries of government services in the broader economy a year and a half before his election.
Well said by Day in there.
Exactly.
I mean, he's not going to do it, but this is the opportunity. And it undercuts what he's saying, that there's just no time to make this some sort of legal battle. And if the Republicans want to file something separately and challenge it with the Supreme Court, go ahead. Go ahead. I mean, that was some of what they were arguing when Biden was taking months and months and months to act on student debt relief. Like, oh, well, it's just going to get tied up in the courts. Well, then go for it. That doesn't mean that it's an excuse not to try.
There's it literally is.
But for them, it is the excuse
not to try.
Yeah, they don't want that,
exactly.
that conversation, which is, I mean, it's doomed. This is a doomed strategy. You can't avoid these things like that. Like this, it's like a retentiveness, and you just have to actually fight. This is the problem I've always had with the Democrats, is that they think they can just maintain all of this stuff and maintain democracy. And you have to cultivate it actively. You can't be like playing defense. And this whole thing of we'll out organize like voter suppression, like that's the whole problem. Like they think that, and it's also like, do they think we all have a goldfish memory? Like we were talking about this in December, and to hear Bill Kristol say the exact same things we were saying, like we should have dealt with this then.
Well, they have a goldfish memory. There were quotes from Democrats saying we thought that the Republicans might be a little more reasonable this time around. In what universe?
But they don't believe that. They just think people will accept that. Like they can't be that stupid.
I think you cannot overestimate the level of incompetence and stupidity that is exercised. The only way I would say that the only way I would qualify that statement is that also presumes a much broader set of goals, as opposed to a bunch of individuals with narrow self-interests functioning. So Chuck Schumer doesn't want to offend any of his colleagues. Mm-hmm. He wants to maintain his position as the Senate or as the leader of the Democrats in the Senate. That could be a majority, that could be a minority, but the primary thing is, how does he maintain his position? And the way that he maintains his position is to ask nothing of those senators.
I mean, is he even that active in negotiations? Biden's kicking the rest of the Democratic leaders out of the room.
I'm talking about in December.
Oh, okay.
When there was a lot of people who were saying we've got to pass this debt ceiling, he was like, I don't want to ask that of anybody. He's afraid of Joe Manchin.
Mm-hmm.
They could have done it very quietly. They could have stuck it into the reconciliation bill. End of story. And now Joe Biden has the opportunity. And this isn't terribly constitutional. I mean, controversial, I would say. The Constitution say the debt must be paid. Period. End of story.
Yeah.
And in fact, we are now, I think we said yesterday on the show, it seems to me you could sue Joe Biden for not upholding the Constitution. And that's what's happening right now with these workers. And so it's going to be interesting to see if the June 6th deadline in which they need to answer that subpoena, Yellen and Biden, if that is actually the true deadline that they're operating under. Because I'll tell you, my experience with the debt ceiling has always been they announce a date and it ends up being a month or 2 months later.
Right.
And they've been, just saying June 1 for a while. And that seems super suspicious to me.
Yeah. I mean, she'll have some other safeguards before that.
Or the real deadline that they're worried about is not when we hit the debt ceiling, but when they have to go to court.
Maybe. That's a little far-fetched for me. I don't think that they're that.
Dan.
We will ask Dan. I bet they're not that worried about this case. That's just my guess. Guess.
There's only, I guess there's two approaches that you would take from this case. One is you welcome it. One is you don't.
Well, the rational one would be to welcome it. Yes.
Exactly. And they don't seem to be doing that.
No. Because they're, as again, Dayan said in his piece on this yesterday, they're appealing to their constituency of centrist op-ed writers. And they would not like that very much.
Another story. And look, there was a lot of people who were, we don't spend a lot of time saying, I told you so. That discharge petition in the House is still happening. It doesn't, that's a very big long shot because you need to get some Republicans to sign on to that. I think you need 2 or 3, but I'm not quite sure. Well, we don't, I think we're pretty good about not being too overly self-congratulatory. We took a lot of grief, I think, in the 22 election for saying that Democrats should go out there and put themselves in the best position to win. And if that means, tarring and feathering a conservative candidate is being conservative in the primary and it helps them, good. It was a very successful strategy.
Yep.
One thing that we'd been saying around these parts for the past couple of years is that there were basically 3 components to inflation, or 4. One was, the biggest one was the screw ups in all the logistics around the country and the world, supply chain problems. A much smaller part was wage increases. Smaller, much smaller. And a small part may have been increased demand, but for the most part, the demand was just not aligning with, there were structural changes in the way that people spent money for a long time.
Yeah, with previous models, people were spending more on things like for their backyard, maybe if they were in 2020 in isolation.
Right. Not going out, maybe not traveling as much. And then that changed. All of a sudden, the switch just flicked, and that was it. But the big part, also another big part, the two biggest parts, logistics, supply chain, and the second part was profit taking. And the so-called greedflation theory has picked up a lot of steam now amongst more mainstream economists.
Yeah.
In January, Lyle Brainerd, then Fed vice chair, said wages weren't the main driver of inflation and pointed to a price spiral where companies mark up prices far higher than increases in their input costs. In other words, we're profiteering a little bit.
Yeah.
In March, chief economist, and this apparently has been the big deal, at UBS Global Wealth Management, Paul Donovan, published a note. This is coming from Axios, of all places, which is a good sign because that means that maybe people in the Beltway will get this message.
Yep.
Published a note on, quote, profit margin-led inflation, describing how in late 2022 and into this year, companies, particularly retailers and consumer good makers, convinced consumers that they needed to raise prices, but they didn't really. Most of the time, these companies have what they call weak pricing power. That means basically they just have to depend on repeat customers and can't wildly increase prices because those repeat customers get pissed. But this time around, there was a story that people bought into.
Yep.
And I would also argue, on top of that being a story that people bought into, there was also just such a hunger to normalize that people weren't going to complain about it in the same way.
Yeah, I mean, there was a collective understanding that we were in a crisis, and that was exploited by corporations, and still is being exploited by corporations in the form of gouging. And like the fact, I mean, even this Axios headline calls it once a fringe theory, now accepted.
Insane. Like, just follow any sort of industry you can see that has this sort of inflation. You can tell, like, people know it's because they just decided to keep raising prices and want to try to make them stick.
Yeah.
And Donovan basically told Axios that the story was like, there's this terrible war or the pandemic or labor shortages or whatever. And that was what they sold these higher prices on. So much flux, people were more accepting of higher costs for everything and more convinced companies had to raise prices. And so they didn't get pissed off and they didn't walk away. Some of it was, real. Like there was how many millions of chickens did we kill because of bird flu? And so it raised the price of eggs.
But they just kept it going. It's like when you're sick for a little bit and you stay home from school for a day or two, but you want to stay home for longer and you just keep saying, oh, I feel so bad, Mom. That's what corporations are doing. And they're all agreeing to it at the same time.
Make a note about Emma next time she's calling sick.
But this is so like what mainstream this is how like naive mainstream economists are, honestly. Is they feel that, no, this kind of consensus with major corporations couldn't be reached because one corporation would understand, well, if we lower our prices, we'd have more people come to us. And that's the notion of capitalism. That's supply and demand. The people that have the lowest price and provide the best service, people will come to them. It doesn't even register in their mind that mega corporations could be understanding the landscape and saying, this is a great opportunity to gouge on like a multi-year basis.
What was it? Was it Catherine Rampell? Is that her name? At the Washington Post. She wrote a piece saying this was a conspiracy theory. And all you needed to do was basically listen to the shareholder calls And half the time, the CEOs are going like, we're able to profit quite a bit because we're able to raise our prices.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just don't, if the inputs go up, if the cost of what it is that you need, whether it's labor or your, the raw materials or shipping or rents or whatever, if the inputs go up, you would not see that level of profits because it would cut into profits. Like if they're raising the prices commensurate to where it was before, you would not see that increase in profits. We know what they did with oil in terms of refineries.
Yeah.
You had to shut down a refinery in the course of people pulling back on driving for an extended period of time. And instead of ramping that back up, the oil companies found like, we don't need to produce as much gas, essentially.
Let's create scarcity.
Yeah, we just increased the cost of it.
Yeah.
I mean, to the extent that it's a conspiracy theory, one, like it's a natural one that all of these actors will follow without, calling
they don't
up
have
their
to
fellow
conspire
capitalists.
with each other.
Exactly.
No,
yeah.
it's just aligned incentives.
It's just the structure of capitalism.
Get away with it. A few weeks after Donovan's paper came out, European Central Bank Executive Board member Fabio Panetta expressed worries that inflation growth was, quote, due to increasing profits. The month following, column in Bloomberg said the idea that corporate profit expansion has been a big driver of inflation was once mostly confined to trade unions and left-wing academics, but it's now taken seriously by central bankers.
Oh, great. Thank you for listening to us, buddies.
Let's hope that these central bankers are taking it seriously and we don't see any more rate increases. By May, the Wall Street Journal published a story on how corporate profits were keeping inflation high, citing the work of Isabella Weber, an economist at the University of Massachusetts, who was derided for her work on the topic back in late 2021.
Corporations were bragging on earnings calls about record profits.
Of course.
How does that connection not get drawn? Well, it's because they believe capitalism is like a natural organism that just behaves in this manner, and there's no that you can't deviate from that orthodoxy. It's hilarious.
And I mean, and the thing is, they can't be that dumb.
Well, they're also
I think it's
corrupt.
just like they're just not going to. Apparently, they call this seller's inflation, not greedflation. But I know someone who. He's a CEO. I mean, he has been a CEO of various major sort of like retail company, and he just said, "It's absolutely the case. It's absolutely the case. Our inputs are just not. Some things have been snags and this and that, but everybody's just taking the opportunity to drive prices up.
Yeah,
because they can.
And in late stage capitalism, there's only so many opportunities that you have for endless growth. And when this is shock doctrine Naomi Klein stuff. There was a shock in the COVID pandemic.
Yeah.
And then there was an understanding, let's take advantage of this. And they've made record profits in the pandemic, these executives, because they maintain this fiction that we just needed to because of the logistical things for way longer than they needed
and
to.
You heard about like the during the pandemic and during crypto, there was like a chip shortage. And now, and those prices really ballooned up high. And now you have companies like NVIDIA cutting production instead of lowering their prices.
Yeah.
Great.
And cutting labor. I mean, those are some of the, luckily we're seeing okay labor numbers, but that's usually what they go to first.
Ryan and Callie says there's also the hidden inflation that hits the consumer when corporations raise the price for a product while lowering the content. Say pasta, $1 for 16 ounces to $1.20 for 14 ounces. But the box the pasta comes in is still the same size. Consumer sees the price increase, but thinks, well, prices go up, but aren't looking at the amount of product because the box is the same. Indeed. We'll keep an eye on that, but the really important thing is that if it's hitting Axios, that means it's hitting like sort of the conventional wisdom, and it is basically a signal that maybe the party is over, corporations, and you're going to see the Fed start talking about this. And then theoretically, what should happen is people start getting annoyed that the prices have gone up and they turn to other products. And somebody at one point goes like, we'll do a price drop.
But do you know how this could be solved? Through taxation of corporations in a way right now, but we don't have, like, the Fed doesn't have a mechanism. All they do is like raise rates, lower rates. They don't have a mechanism to deal with this. Identifying it is our best hope right now.
Well, Nixon imposed price controls.
Well, that too. But I mean,
Coy Robin would tell you that was under the New Deal hegemony that we've since left, and we need to find a way back to, I guess.
Are you kidding me? If we did price controls, I'd be giddy, but that's not, I mean.
Come on, man.
Can you imagine if Biden's afraid that they're going to fight him, like just saying the 14th Amendment exists and that we have to pay our debts? What he would say if people, like someone suggested to him in this cabinet, implement price controls?
I say we go for it.
He'd literally pee down his leg.
I'm going to hold back on saying why I think that's probably impossible at this point. I think they probably have already planned for that possibility. I'm not going to.
No, I mean, it's obvious.
I'm not going to.
Okay. Just infer.
I mean, look, it happens to all of us. It will happen to all of us. I mean, we get
It's happened to me in we
get that lucky. Get that lucky. Want to just do the American Prospect has a great story on what's happening in Minnesota, and we've had people IM quite a bit. We mentioned this yesterday, I think it was. Minnesota, like in 2016, people were worried that Minnesota was going red. And even in 2020, Republicans had maintained control of the state Senate in Minnesota when Biden had won in the state. In 2022, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party, the DFL, that's sort of like that's instead of the Democratic Party there, right?
Yeah, it sort of grew up from like the 1920s, 30s populist movement.
They gained 3 Senate seats. They have a 1-seat majority in the Senate. They also have the House, and they have Democratic Governor Tim Walz, who easily won, I guess. So this is the first trifecta they've had for almost 8 years. And this is what they've managed to do. I mean, it's amazing.
Historic.
Historic. And I guess their session just ended. They have a bill a law now they've passed, mandates paid sick days for almost all workers. It accrues at the rate of 1 hour per 30 hours worked up to a maximum of 48 hours. Forbids non-compete agreements in labor contracts. That 48 hours would probably work out to 12 days. It forbids non-compete agreements in labor contracts. It establishes sectoral bargaining system for nursing homes. That's huge. That means it's not just a matter of a nursing home that people that nurses can strike against or bargain with. It's across all of the nursing homes. It allows teachers to negotiate class sizes. It bans captive audience meetings where employers force their workers to listen to anti-union propaganda. It also sets up protections for meat packers, construction workers, and Amazon employees. I think we mentioned that the other day, actually. Mm-hmm. And they just passed another bill 2 days ago that guarantees a minimum wage for Uber and Lyft drivers.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's really encouraging, especially given like what we saw in California some years ago. There's this great video going around. I mean, we have it, but we don't need to play it. But the legislator, state senator Omar Fateh, he was lifted into the air by a bunch of Uber and Lyft drivers, chanting him. Let's play it. I have it in. I sent it in the chat there. But that's really like this. They legalized pot. They expanded public college, making it free for a lot more families too, right?
They also
more funding for public defenders.
This is after the Uber Lyft bill was passed on Sunday. Guarantees a minimum wage for Uber and Lyft drivers.
So cool.
It is pretty cool. Can you bet on re-election numbers? For that?
Yeah, honestly.
They had the other big policy they passed is paid family and medical leave. So people who have earned at least $3,500 over the past year will be eligible for up to 12 weeks of benefits in both categories. This is a maximum of 20 weeks per year. Benefits will be calculated with a progressive replacement rate, 90% of prior wages under half the state wage, 66% up to the full average, plus 55% above the average. I mean, that, it's not a perfect policy. It would be good to do it just regardless of if you, based upon what you're earning now, as opposed to what had been, for all parents, even if you hadn't worked over the last 12 months. In other words, just a minimum benefit. We did that with the child, earned the child tax credit. Minnesota has a universal free school breakfast and lunch program. Mm-hmm. It's only the third in the nation. They passed a law to protect abortion rights. It is already legal in Minnesota, but not a bad thing to do at this point.
Codifying it, yeah.
Well, because that's where the clinic in North Dakota moved right across the river into Moorhead, Minnesota. So that's the one clinic basically servicing North Dakota is in Minnesota.
They have passed a slate of pro-LGBT protections. One bill banned conversion therapy. Two others protected non-residents seeking gender-affirming care or abortions from being punished or extradited by conservative states. Incidentally, if you're Canadian, sign that petition. It's the last day, I think, to sign that petition to welcome folks seeking asylum because of repressive anti-trans laws in this country. We can put that in the chat, in the podcast and YouTube description again. They've legalized recreational marijuana. They've instituted automatic voter registration, also super important and super smart. Restoration of voting rights to felons, gun control measures, a huge education overhaul, making prison calls free, and a law allowing unauthorized immigrants to get driver's license. State budget poised to increase by 40%. All this stuff is great, and it's one vote. Will you just do we have that clip of Waltz signing something?
Yeah.
The gun legislation. Yeah, this is the gun legislation, just as an example.
But it is a good day. In the State of the State speech I gave a little over a month ago, I said, if anyone in America doubts that we are going to do everything to protect our children, I said, watch us. And this group here has been watching and trying to protect our children and our families and our communities for decades, quite literally decades. The issues that we will sign today are two very simple, common sense issues that have been being asked to be debated here at the Capitol for decades, and even that small request was not honored until this year. And the leadership you're going to hear from in the House and the Senate around the whole spectrum of public safety, a transformational bill to make our communities safer, to bring restorative justice into the forefront, and to have the most basic protections around firearms that we can put into place in the state is going to happen. This is an issue some of you have heard me talk about for a long time. I grew up around firearms. I've hunted my entire life. I own them to this day. I used them in the military. And when asked, I will tell people I was the top gun of the congressional trap shoot 3 years in a row. I know how to use these things. I understand our rights as Americans to do these things. But I refuse to allow extremists to define what responsible gun ownership looks like and to make this about the Second Amendment. This is not about the Second Amendment. This is about the safety of our children and our communities. That's what's happening here today.
So, I mean, you pair this with the LGBTQ protections. You pair this with all of the really important economic protections, obviously the abortion rights, but when you're talking about parental leave, and you're talking about medical leave, and you're talking about free lunches, and you're, on and on.
Banning non-competes is a great pro-worker move too.
Paid sick leave, and basically what they're doing is they are legislating in Minnesota the way that you're supposed to legislate. When you get the power, that's when you put these things through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't get hung up on, we only have one vote majority. We've got to do everything we can to protect that majority. If you think that way and it inhibits you from doing what you think is right, it is not going to end up protecting that majority any more so than doing this stuff. In fact, I would argue this is how you saw the enthusiasm for the,
the school lunches, the kids, cheering. I mean, it was a well done photo op, but every normal person's going to be enthusiastic about that.
I mean, doing this is not only important for all the people that it helps, but not doing this is a favor to fascism that that every Democrat from Ilhan to like Durbin apparently is concerned about. And like you look at this paid family leave thing. I've been very critical of the Minnesota Republican Party. I think they're as rancid as any in the country. But when you actually have Democrats proposing things like paid family leave, it makes the Republicans try to act normal. They have to get in there with something like, oh, we're going to do optional private insurance plan with tax incentives for employees, right? Whereas like if the Democrats are the one proposing that like milquetoast crap, then the Republicans can go be like, well, actually, we're going to make this about I don't know, throwing immigrants out or something.
It's about framing it, right? And like setting the debate yourself or setting the contours of it yourself. And like the fact that, again, they just have this 1-seat majority in the state Senate. It's ironic because like in the U.S. Senate, we also just have a 1-seat majority and there's no ability for.
We have the filibuster.
We have the filibuster. But like this is what actual democracy looks like in Minnesota. And Minnesota borders Wisconsin, another state that is like kind of on the cusp of beating back a lot of extremist Republican gains that were made during the Obama administration and Trump and the Tea Party era, right? So this is a lesson to Wisconsin too. Like this can happen maybe there. They have a Democratic governor. Hopefully with like the new maps from the state Supreme Court, they can get some more Democrats in place and act with the respective urgency. Like it is so frustrating to live in New York State, a blue state like this, and understand that even though we're basically blue the entire time, we have a Democratic governor, we've got Democratic state legislature, there is no urgency to pass similar things in the same way, because when it becomes stagnant like that, it creates its own corruption. But these things are possible, obviously.
And I think a difference too is that as opposed to the Minnesota Democratic DFL, Democratic Farmer Labor Party, the point of the New York Democratic Party infrastructure is to attack the left and to crush the left. There is no they've made it very clear that they really have no interest in winning or actually achieving any sort of gains in the legislature with their power. They'd rather just crap on progressive state legislators and issue press releases crapping on AOC for saying one thing or the other. So it's also a difference in priorities as well.
Well, yeah, I mean this is the New York State Democratic Party is sort of like more like a gang than anything else.
Yeah.
But the point, the larger lesson here is you when you get the power, you use it. You use it like you're getting away in a getaway car. And we've seen the Republicans do this whenever they get into power. And also, these voting measures as a minimum, automatic voter registration, expanding the franchise, that is also something that enhances your power. Building out the opportunity, making it easier for people to unionize and giving them more reason to unionize also builds your power.
Feed people.
And providing material benefits to people, it doesn't have a one-to-one relationship in terms of them supporting you down the road. But the point is it's definitely going to help. But there are specific measures that you can take that are associated with increasing your power and expanding the franchise has been shown to help Democrats. That's why Republicans are so against people voting. They have been explicit about this over the years. They know the fewer people who vote, ultimately, the better for them.
It's what Matt said earlier in reference to Biden and the debt ceiling fight. Like, Democrats can't get into power and just maintain. It's literally irresponsible when you have a party as extreme as the Republican Party.
Speaking of maintenance, David Day in 12:47, it's about a half hour or 15 minutes ago. So Joe Biden, who mumbles in public about, quote, having the authority, end quote, to continue paying the nation's bills, has signaled intention to file opposition to the case challenging the constitutionality of the debt ceiling statute. It's not that Biden or the White House thinks that's not enough time or that the Supreme Court will stop any effort to end run the debt limit. By their actions, they are demonstrably opposed to challenging the debt limit. They believe in it.
Yep. They love great.
All right. Well, Dane will be on Friday. We'll get an update on that. We're going to take a break, head into the fun half of the program. Just a reminder, folks, it is your support that can help make this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you help this show survive and thrive. We need your support. If you listen to the show on any type of regular basis and you like what we do, become a member. Jointhemajorityreport.com. First half of the program, generally, long form interview, or we bring on two reporters, or we bring on organizers or activists, or we do some analysis of some of the bigger stories out there in the news. If you can find anybody else that does this, support them. But if you can't, support us. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. You get 10% off. They're a co-op, fair trade, started by helping some Mexican growers in Chiapas, and sort of, I think, the Zapatistas a little bit, and just a great co-op that makes coffee, and they're movement partners out in Madison, Wisconsin. So justcoffee.coop, and you can get the MR blend, or you can get the Merck Marin thing. Doesn't matter. We will put all the links in the podcast and YouTube subscriptions. Also, check out the AM Quickie. People are loving that.
It's great. It really is.
Emma.
Yes.
ESPN. Did you guys talk about how the Celtics are going to be the first NBA team to
now
come
it's
back from
150 and 0
and 0?
Yeah, because the Lakers went out sad last night. Poor LeBron.
I mean, he did fine.
No, but that's what I'm saying. He went
a
off,
better
and
team.
Anthony Davis like lumbering about. Anyway, but we spoke a lot about the NBA playoffs. Jimmy Butler just being on this other level. Jokic as well. What's Carmelo Anthony's legacy? We talked also about Matthew Tkachuk, who's kind of the Jimmy Butler of the NHL right now. Both 8 seeds making huge runs out of Florida. And we talked about the Arizona Coyotes being rejected by their community. Where will they go next? YouTube.com/ESPN show.
Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Tonight, Dave Griscom talking with Donald Parkinson about the LaRouchites, the return of weird leftists, and something that I frankly haven't really been interested in until like maybe the last 6 months. But you kind of see certain patterns with regards to, I guess, insane wreckers, I guess I'd call them. But talking LaRouchites tonight, patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
I have noticed that is where, like, that is a big cohort, and I don't feel like they have the same impact.
They do
because
this,
they're so out of touch.
It's sort of like a spectacle type of thing, but it's weird how they run the same sort of game, which is like, first, we're the ultra leftists, the most left of any of you, and then it's, once you've established yourself, we're actually patriotic and more compatible with America, and you guys are some kind of foreign influence that needs to be excised.
All right, 646-257-3920. We'll take some phone calls. See you soon.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are
you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back, back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.